As I was preparing to record this video, I really went back and forth with regards to what do I really want to be talking about. I set up the structure, I have the platform, I've released a couple of these. And as I was building out the channel, I really thought, I kind of know what I want to say. There's a lot of thoughts that I want to share, and this is a good platform for it. But as I've gotten to the point where the platform is complete and the ecosystem is sort of self-sustaining, I've really been questioning, what do I actually want to share? Do I want to share? Do we really need more voices on the internet, taking our attention away from the realities happening around us in our lives, giving us their opinions and giving us their views? It's still something that's unresolved in myself, and I expect that it'll continue to be. But what I'm finding is my system, my mind is trying to grasp at any form of control that it can in a world that feels completely out of control. Now, I had all these ideas, I had all these things that I wanted to share, but it's becoming increasingly difficult for me to compartmentalize from everything that's actually happening in the world. It's becoming increasingly difficult to compartmentalize with colleagues, with clients, with neighbors, with friends, with families, at the grocery store, with anybody who asks me, how are you? And so I notice in that moment that I have a choice. I have the choice to deliver the social etiquette, deliver the social nicety. I'm good, thank you, and how are you? I'm well, thanks, how are you? Or be honest about the fact that I'm experiencing this profound cognitive dissonance where in the immediate vicinity of my life, I am enormously blessed with humans who are fairly healthy, with moderate financial abundance, moderate physical safety, while at the same time being witness to a world that is completely falling apart and dissolving into not just authoritarian regime in the United States, but also the rise of fascism everywhere, in Russia with Putin, in China with Xi Jinping. It's almost like our world systems, this capitalist global economy that we've created and invested ourselves in, is giving rise to them. They're blossoming like mushrooms in a wet forest. Now, there are a lot of different people on the internet making predictions and saying this is what's going to happen, and this is what you need to do with your money, and this is what supplies you should be accumulating in order to protect yourself from the fall of the world. The view that I don't hear so much articulated, and this is where I feel like, maybe I do have something to say, not because I'm a bestower of knowledge, but because I find that the most important thing I'm doing right now in my life is connecting with people and having real conversations about this. My hope is that in sharing these thoughts, I initiate some conversation within yourself, with other people, so that we can actually start to raise awareness and talk about not just the monetary aspect of it, not just are we going to war with Iran or not, but so that we can actually talk about what is the real human toll that this is taking on our psychology, on our nervous systems, on our spiritual well-being. I think we're all forced to live in this compartmentalized world where we're continuing to move through the motions of civil society while also experiencing an enormous amount of heartbreak and grief about what's happening in the world. So as I sat down to write this essay, I felt like I had a choice. I got all my nice little notes typed up, and I can have all sorts of like fun frameworks and interesting things and thoughts about spirituality and thoughts about psychology and art and creativity. And maybe those will come out over time. But the reality is that it seems to me very clear that right now, the most important thing I can do is stop compartmentalizing. Because when I look around at the state of the world and the state of society, I go, yeah, like we got here because of our collective compartmentalization over time. So rather than look at this through the lens of like where to put your money and what are the predictions, who's going to do what, when, which is a very fickle science, and humans are extremely good at coming up with great solutions to the wrong problems and extremely proficient at making poor predictions. I want to take a lens at how do we support ourselves in this moment, in the next days, in the next weeks, in the next months. How do we support ourselves and how do we support each other in our physical well-being, in our mental well-being, in our spiritual well-being as we experience essentially the fall of the empire? Now, in the midst of everything that's happening and all of the people, I've noticed especially men on the internet with false confidence, this is what's going to happen, this is what you should do. I think that we are being invited to something much more profound if we want to actually face the reality of the world as it is. The humility of saying, I don't know. I don't know what's actually going to happen. I often recall a Zen parable, which I'll butcher and I don't really care. There is a farmer living in a village with his son. Every day, the son helps his father cultivate the fields and take care of their animals, one of which is a horse, who does a lot of the hard labor around the farm for them. One day, the horse runs away. The villagers hear about this. It's a tight-knit, small community. They come over to the farmer and say, oh my gosh, this is so terrible. Your horse is gone. Now how are you going to tend to your fields? What are you going to do? Such terrible news. And the wise old farmer says, I don't know. We'll see. The next day, the horse comes back and brings 3 mares with it. The villagers hear about this and they come back to the farmer and say, oh my gosh, such great news. So good. So good. Now you have 4 horses. You had 1 and now you have 4. This is wonderful, yes? And the wise old farmer says, I don't know. We'll see. The next day, the farmer's son is trying to tame one of the new mares, and in doing so, falls and injures his leg. The villagers hear about this and they come over to the wise farmer once more and they say, "How terrible, what bad news this is. Now your farmhand isn't going to be able to help you. How will you tend to the fields? This is terrible." And the wise old farmer says, "I don't know. We'll see." Within the following week, the king's soldiers march through the village in order to draft soldiers to go to war. They stop by the farmer's house and they see the farmer's son bedridden, unable to be used in combat. The soldiers move on, take the young men who can go to war, and leave the farmer's son in bed. The villagers come over and once again say to the farmer, "This is so wonderful. Your son is not going to war. This is great news." And the wise old farmer says, "I don't know. We'll see." Now, I think that this is an incredibly important time for us to balance our tendency to want to project, our tendency to want to control, our tendency to want to protect ourselves, to establish a sense of safety, which ultimately is illusory. There is no real safety, and we could stockpile all the water and food and bunkers in the world and then die of a heart attack. And I don't actually think that we want safety necessarily or control. We want the feeling of safety. We want the feeling of control. And now is a time when we're being pushed more than ever, I think, to face the moment as it's arising and let go of a lot of the predictions that we're making about how things are happening. It's becoming increasingly difficult to maintain the state of dissociative compartmentalization with the people in our lives, with ourselves, with the people that we run into in the street. We see each other, we feel each other, we see the news, our nervous systems are all attuned to the frequency of what's happening in the world. I think we're terrified. We sense what's happening. And yet we plod along as though it's a bad dream or a scary movie that we're going to wake up from all of a sudden and things will be okay. Under this sense of tacit normality that we encounter in a creepy place like a grocery store, we go on the internet and we see the true state of our internal experience. We are terrified, we're angry, we're frustrated, we're scrambling to understand what's happening. We want to know who to blame, we want to know what to do, we want to know how to respond. And that's the one thing that I really want to emphasize in what I want to talk about today. It feels very clear to me that in this moment, what we're really being called to is actually no different than what humans have always been called to answer the question, how am I being called to respond? How are we being called to respond to the truth of essentially the results of our actions? Because it's really easy to fall into in-grouping and blaming and pointing, even to the horrific politicians who are doing horrific things to people we wish no harm to with the money that we pay in our taxes to fund the war machine. But the reality is that this is a much longer story than just the last news cycle, than just the last election cycle. This is the story of how, over the past century, we have become complacent. We have gradually eroded our capacity to exert agency in our life. We've become lazy. We've allowed ourselves to be lulled into a sense of compulsive distractedness and numbness, and gradually relinquished power for comfort. The particularities of what we're experiencing right now are different, sure. There's weapons of mass destruction, there's AI, there's robotics coming on the way, and all of that is genuinely terrifying. In my opinion, primarily because those who control the means of productions, those in control, those who maneuver the war machine, have always needed a working population. Now we're looking at the prospect of that no longer being the case. Over 300 million Americans, for example. What happens when they can all be replaced? A couple of things are pretty clear to me. We are all terrified, and we are all exhausted. Because the physiological state of stress is supposed to be a state that lasts for a short period of time in order to remove us from danger. I get very scared, I run away. I get very angry, I attack. Once that passes, my system comes back to a state of homeostasis. The danger now and why we're so exhausted is because there is nowhere to run. The horrors of the world are in our pocket. The horrors of our world are in the street. The horrors of our world are in our minds. And even if we can experience immediate safety, it's a little bit like waving to the camera with your family and everything's okay in the forefront, while in the background a raging wildfire comes towards you. Is that really a state conducive to peace of mind? And this chronicity, this continuity of stress is extremely detrimental to the human system, to our wellness, to our emotional availability, to our capacity to care, to our capacity to show up for one another, to our capacity for vitality. And so we're feeling terrified, we're feeling exhausted, and yet it seems very clear to me that we have to turn towards what's happening. We have to move away from patterns of avoidance. We have to actually be able to face the reality of the choices that we've allowed to be made or have made directly. And in order to do that, we have to feel resourced. And so today's essay is going to be about how do we support ourselves through the fall of the contemporary empire and the transition into whatever world order we're going to exist in the next century. There's a lot of downsides to how technology has brought us all together, brought us into each other's living rooms, brought us across the world to see the suffering that's happening. And there's a lot of upsides as well, right? we have so much more awareness. In fact, maybe more awareness than the nervous system was ever equipped to know how to handle. I don't think that it's that we're not equipped to process the information that's coming our way, period. I think that we're in a great period of transition. And I think that all of the social changes that we're feeling around us and seeing around us are actually just a reflection of huge internal changes that are happening in the human consciousness. How do we actually support ourselves as we move through and live through what feels like the end of the world? And when I say the end of the world, by the way, we quickly conjure up ideas of sort of post apocalyptic Hollywood films. We say, oh no, the end of the world. And we forget something very, very important, which is that we have always been living through the end of the world. No matter who you are, where you've been in human history, no matter what experience you've had, no matter how wealthy or powerful or impoverished, the truth is the apocalypse is always the end of the story. Your end, the universe as you know it and exists in your mind, ends. The story is the same. We're all going to die. I'll say that again because we don't really like to hear that. And it sounds like a bummer when you say it at first, but we're all going to die. That's always been how it is, and that's always how it's going to continue to be. And when a lineage like Buddhism encourages to turn towards that fact, it's not to be morbid. It's not because they love being buzzkills and the ongoing grand party of the human intoxicative experience. It's to begin to remind us hey, the story, though the particularities change, has actually always been the same. And so the mission here seems to be not how do we continue living longer and longer and longer, like the contemporary US medical system wants or billionaires are trying to figure out how to do. It's how do we live now? So this video is a percolation of a few different thoughts on how to support ourselves through this end of the world and the ushering of the new world that's coming. Because it is terrifying, actually, and there is so much change and so much uncertainty, and the sort of quantum possibility of humanity seems like it could all of a sudden take a right and go to the best case scenario ever available to humans, or take a left and go to the worst case scenario, and we all just had to destroy ourselves. But it feels to me like in the midst of all of this composting of the old systems and structures that we're inhabiting, which, by the way, we've been asking for a long time, something is emerging as very possible as technology, with all of its downsides, democratizes creativity, democratizes communication, democratizes information gathering. The paradox is that these regimes and this proliferation of fascist movements is actually occurring simultaneously with all of us having more access to information than ever before. So it makes it much harder for these regimes to contain information, to contain the truth. It's very strange. And I think part of what's so exhausting about this to us is that we have to begin to live in cognitive dissonance in order to reconcile those. I'm okay, the world is on fire. I'm okay, the world is still on fire. What is happening right now? Technology is making it so that these small groups of individuals can control us on such a large scale, but at the same time empower us to be able to share information and connect in different ways. And this democratization of the creative ability, the creative power, while it still lasts, because in the US we're experiencing a very rapid erosion of civil rights, what becomes possible is a renaissance. And in French, renaissance means rebirth. What needs to happen for rebirth? Death. A lot of death. A forest needs to burn down in order for new growth to come. And I think a lot of us for many years have been wanting there to be a change in the systems. These systems are broken. Well, here we are. They're falling apart. Now what? What I really want to advocate for in this video is cultivating systems of resilience. Cultivating resilience, not in a monoculture way, but in a way that each of us is cultivating pods of resilience that connect with one another, like cells in an organism, in order to support us in moving through what's going to be a prolonged period of difficulty, whether it's financial stress and strain and economic recessions, whether it's warfare, whether it's the erosion of civil rights. These trends are going to continue for as far as we can foresee. And if we want to continue to be responsive, continue to be engaged, and not tap out and surrender into nihilism, we need systems of resilience. And they need to be cultivated at the individual level and then grown out. As my teacher Tom shares in his framework, the Open Mandala, the growth method is 1, 2, 4, 8. 1, individual first. 2, dyadic interaction. 4, small groups. 8, culture. Individual, dyads, small groups, and then culture. What I want to talk about today is how we as individuals can cultivate a resilience that then grows into our immediate circle and we create a network of support. And I'm not interested in feeding into the doomsday narrative at all. I'm interested in feeding into the cultivate resilience narrative because a healthy garden is a garden full of variety. Nature already figured that out. A garden that only has one plant can maybe be beautiful as it is with that one plant and be very optimized for that one plant. But if there's a aphid that comes through that really likes that plant, it'll decimate the garden. Nature loves variety. It loves variety of skin tone. It loves variety of language. It loves variety of religious beliefs. It loves variety of sexual orientation. It loves variety of what we call ability. This variety makes us stronger. It makes us more resilient. And so I want to spend some time talking about how do we go into ourselves to tap into what is it that I actually can cultivate in the garden of my life so that I can give rise to it and share it relationally with people around me. Going back to what I was saying before, the story has always been the same. The particulars change, but the story is always the same. I die, you die, we all die. Civilizations die, new civilizations take their place. Until they don't, who knows? And I actually find that strangely comforting. In our culture, we treat death like a failure. We take our aging and elders and we put them away in buildings so we don't have to look at them or deal with them. We treat death as though it's a personal failure of some kind, when in reality, it's just like the most natural process that has ever happened and ever will continue to happen for embodied beings. And we forget about something that nature reminds us of over and over and over again. The American transcendentalists, Emerson, Margaret Fuller, Henry David Thoreau, talked about this over and over again. Nature is our greatest teacher, and every natural fact is reflecting a spiritual truth back for us. And nature teaches us that everything in the universe operates on seasons, orbits of planets, the movement of seasons where trees are born again and then go inward and born again and go inward, the tides, everything comes and goes, life and death, the arising and cessation of beings, of thought forms, everything is in cycles. Why would civilization be any different? I think one of the problems is we've been consuming this myth of infinite economic linear growth, right? The GDP just keeps growing and growing and growing, which is completely antithetical to anything that we see in nature. Suns don't grow forever. Entire galaxies and solar systems don't grow forever. Everything has a cycle of expansion, contraction, expansion, contraction. And other lineages and other views than the predominant one in American global hegemony have been much more attuned to the reality of how civilization cycles rise and fall. If you go back and read the Iliad or the Odyssey, if you read the Ramayana, if you read the Bhagavad Gita, all of these texts are so much more attuned to the reality that everything arises and ceases in cycles and seasons. And so the fall of the American hegemony is scary to those who are in power, but actually not necessarily a failure. That might be controversial. I think there's many things we've done wrong along the way, but it also just seems to be the way that civilizations and trees and seasons and everything else in the natural world operate. They come and they go. And when they go, it's not the end of everything. It's a reconfiguration of the components, a reassembling of the parts that are left over once what is no longer adaptive falls away. I don't know that this is a time that we need to fight the collapse of the system. I think now is a time that we need to turn towards and face the reality of the results of all the actions that we've collectively taken over the past couple thousand years. And I do think that we're in a particularly precious period of time that is a short window of time, actually, where the masses of people actually still have power. In the United States of America, what is it, 350 million people nowadays? Those 350 million people still have power in their numbers. But the masses who have always been able to disrupt and cause change and form labor unions and advocate for themselves have had value because those who controlled the means of production still needed them. They still needed taxpayers, they still needed production and worker bees, they still needed a mass population to fund their lavish lifestyle and the power that they hoard for themselves. But what happens when that no longer is the case? What happens when an army of mechanized, semi-sentient drones can take over the population that up until now has been really necessary for those in power? That's something that I worry about. That's something that's scary to me. And so now, to me, it feels like is really the time where we need to think about how are we using the leverage? How are we using the power, both at the individual level and then the individual creating those collective pods to exert change so that we move in a direction we want to move in. It's easy to make predictions, and it's also easy to be wrong about predictions because humans are terrible at actually knowing what's going on. So what I want to talk about today is the psychological and spiritual impact that all of this is having on us and how we can actually cultivate resilience through the transitions that we're going to continue to experience. I don't pretend to bestow advice. I don't pretend to know what's actually going to happen. Much of my time recently has just spent feeling my grief, feeling my confusion, feeling my fear, feeling my rage. But what I want to do is deepen the kind of conversation I think we need, which is a conversation which brackets conclusions and looks at the way things actually are now and how we can support ourselves now. So, okay, yes, we're collapsing, as all empires do. Now what? What do we have to gain? What do we have to lose? Because these periods of collapse are very terrifying and destabilizing, but they're also full of opportunity. I'm not interested in pointing fingers or giving advice. I'm interested in building resilience and cultivating the foundations for stability in what appears to be inevitable and accelerating change that we are all in together. One thing that I've been thinking about is forming resilience circles, micro tribes of people who care and trust one another, who can exchange skills, meet regularly, create a tactile connection with one another, create an emotional connection with one another, share their thoughts and feelings, spend time as families together, and coming into these pods that can then form larger pods. Because I don't think it's if, I think it's when the supply chains fail. I think it's when the grocery store fail. I think it's when the economy recedes. I think it's when all of these things are going to happen. What's going to matter to us is not how much money we have in our bank accounts. It's how close and safe and connected we feel with the people in our life who can support us and we can support back. There's something very interesting that's happening, right? Where if we look throughout the history of humans, we go, what's been the most important thing? Social connection, bar none, no exception, no competition. And we're finding that now, having moved through this pretty prolonged era of disconnection and separation, we're rediscovering the importance of human connection, but not knowing how to forge it. And I've been finding that what it takes is not one person to do a lot, it's a lot of people to do a little. Start a walking group, start a men's group, start a women's group, start a book club, start a potluck, open your doors for like human office hours every other weekend, invite your neighbors over, share food with them. Sure, post on the internet, but not in a way that's broadcasting to an impersonal audience, in a way that's actually connecting with people who you're in relationship with, in a way that's responsive. For what it's worth, I actually do believe Armageddon is upon us, okay? But I don't believe it's the end of the world. I think it's just the end of the world as we know it. Whatever the ultimate outcome in the next century, to me, one thing is really clear. We're entering a phase of critical phase change, where whatever emerges on the other side is going to be very different from what we're existing in now. Whether the timeline is 50 years or 100 years or 150 years, it's our children or our children's children or our children's children's children, which is really not that far, who are going to be experiencing the results. I think now is a time where we are being forced to let go of the outcome in order to cultivate the foundations, the soil for what we want to emerge in the future. Because a lot of what we're experiencing is the cumulative effect of kicking the can down the road from one generation to the next. Oh, that'll be their problem. That'll be their problem. Now climate change is our problem, and it's going to continue to be our children's problem. Now social divide is going to be our children's problem. Now the economic mess that every country is in is going to be their problem. Trillions of dollars of debt is going to be their problem. AI ethics is going to be their problem. So how do we set the foundation to support them and empower them with what they're going to need to navigate those problems, not just saddle them with the problem itself? Times of crisis and transition are times of incredible opportunity. It's the disruption of an ecosystem that currently exists that allows a new ecosystem to grow in its stead. Many of us have been wanting to see the falls of these systems for such a long time. We just didn't really want to live through it. Well, here it is. Escalating and compounding dysfunction appear to have brought us to the brink of seemingly monumental change in the very fabric of the global structure we're all living in. And I think that each of us needs to remember that individually we matter. Our attention, our engagement, our vitality, our kindness, our compassion, our skillfulness, our relationality, our humanity matter. As Caesar says in Planet of the Apes, ape together strong. Together, this individual feeling that I matter actually compounds, and then we actually start to have momentum. Then we actually start to have the ability to sway the direction of our culture in the direction we want to go in, rather than continuously yielding our power in small little increments to people who actually harvest it for themselves and exchange it for basically comfort. I rarely feel more uneasy than I walk into a grocery store. Every time I do groceries, I'm confronted with this feeling of how fragile our social cohesion is. Now, all of us use the bathroom, but we do that in private. It's a basic biological function that we kind of isolate and we all know we're doing it. We just don't really talk about it. Eating food is another basic biological function, and going to a grocery store is a reminder that we are not exempt from that. It's kind of like we're all going to the bathroom around each other. You walk in, everybody's avoiding eye contact. It's like we're moving through in this zombified mass, going to grab your cucumbers, going to grab your chicken, not really any kind of horizontal interaction for the most part. And I think all of us really know how dependent we are on this system that is so brittle. We have forgotten how to feed ourselves because of specialization and become helplessly dependent on a system that is completely out of our control. And it's very clear to me in those moments in the grocery store that it would not take much for this to quickly devolve into tribalistic behavior. A hungry human is very dangerous, whether it's hunger of the body or hunger of the mind. Those structures, such as the ones that support our experience going to the grocery store, are really beautiful in some ways. Many of us are well fed, we have access to food that we can trust, but those systems make us very dependent. And I think what's happening is that we feel the structure, the tectonic structure of those systems shifting beneath our feet. And a lot of us are scrambling to figure out, what do we actually do now? The reality is that samsara has always been a fraught experience. That's not new. But historically, I think we've been much more attuned to the cyclical nature of our world, to the cycles of birth and death. Nature has always had power over us. Now we just have an ability to sort of pave over and put behind a brick wall the reality that nature still holds power over us. And it's moments of social collapse like the one we're living through where that truth starts to shine through the cracks. I'm actually a big history buff. I love reading about human history. I love going down rabbit holes on Wikipedia. I love reading books that tell us where we've been and how we've thought and what we've done and contextualize the current experience that we have through the historic experience that we've had. And a lot of people right now are obsessed about predicting where the arrow will go, which I think is misguided. I think if we want to know where the arrow is going, the best way to do that is know where the arrow is coming from. And it's really actually hard to study history because it's notoriously unreliable. History books are written by elites. They're written by those who control the means of production. They're written by the victors of the wars. They're full of inaccuracy and self-mythologizing and compartmentalized views. Now, something that's important to recognize is I don't think we're on the brink of civilizational collapse. I think it's well underway. And if we're still here in 1,000 years, if we haven't blown ourselves up, historians are probably going to look back decades, if not centuries from now, and go, oh yeah, those were the early signs of the beginning of the decay of essentially the American-led Western global hegemony. We like to fantasize and wish that World War I and World War II were kind of the wars to end all wars, but maybe they were just tremors for something that we're living through now. And maybe World War III is this cataclysmic thing and we all die, in which case there's really not much to do anyway other than just pray and hold your loved ones. But if it's not that, if it's a death that's more slow, more painful in a way, because we have to live through it for the next few centuries, then it's very likely that its causes have been building up over time as well. The reality I'm pointing to is that maybe we need a collapse. This is a time where we need to look at ourselves very honestly, not the people across the aisle, not the people we blame for everything that's happening, but within ourselves, as individuals, as groups. How are we contributing to this shit show? I think now more than ever, we need new systems, new cosmologies, new language, new religions, new social systems that are going to be able to support us as we depart from all of the different ones that have supported us for the past few centuries. I think the dominance of a few systems of thinking is going to break down and make way for a multiplicity of views. And I think that's really healthy. The question is, how do we live through that? And how do we create harmony through that? These moments of stress confront us with what we're really made of. They confront us with our primal instincts and our true identity. It's easy to say, may all beings be peaceful and happy. It's easy to go in a grocery store and be civil and polite until the grocery stores start to be empty. Then what? The narrative predominantly is that we revert back to a violent tribalism to protect our own. Now, that might be true, or maybe that just brings us back to our social roots. Maybe we start to actually need each other again. I used to need my neighbors to exchange goods. Now I don't need my neighbors because Amazon's got me covered. And I see this playing out in relationship all the time. We were kind of forced into it when we were in small hunter-gatherer groups. We didn't have the choice. And that needing each other actually brought us closer, whether we liked it or not. Nowadays, if I don't like my partner, I'll just find another one, go on a dating app. If you're not going to make meals for me, I'll just go eat at Burger King. My groceries are provided for me. My electricity is provided for me. My water is provided for me, if I can pay for it. We no longer need each other, or so we think. And times like this remind us, actually, that despite the illusion of self-sufficiency that we all inhabit and enjoy some benefits from, we actually do need each other. And whatever the outcome is, we build systems of resilience. The best gardens who survive over time, the best trees, are not the ones who were able to perfectly predict all the conditions they would be subject to in the future. They were the ones who had enough redundancy built into them that when the flood came, or the fire came, or the hurricane came, or the aphids came, or the invaders came, they were equipped to respond to the changing and new conditions. And that's what we need. And that's what I think practice can help us with, is develop internal groundedness in order to have resilience, in order to be able to adapt and respond creatively, flexibly, to quickly let go of rigid views, to quickly let go of rigid historical practices in order to respond to the truth of how things are now. Here's a story. My son and I were playing chess the other day, and we pulled out the chess pieces, put them on the board, and he says, ugh, white goes first, racist. I went, yeah, why don't we start with black pieces today? And you know what he said? He thought about it for a second and he said, well, but that's against the rules. And I thought in that moment, says who? Who cares that sanctioned chess tournaments start with white pieces first every time? The only thing preventing us from changing that is the views we hold, the thoughts we have. There's nothing in the ether compelling us to do things the way we've been doing other than habit, other than conditioning, other than the views that we hold. And so in that moment, we just made the decision, okay, blacks go first today. You know what happened? We had a great game. And maybe if somebody had been in there observing, they would have said, you can't do that. It disrupts the way things were. And indeed, it does. But it doesn't mean the game isn't possible. It just means we need to approach it differently. And I think that it's the individuals and groups who are going to be able to let go of views that are not helpful, that are going to be adaptive as we move through this Rubicon, this time where we're either going to go one way or we're going to go the other way. And the situation is pretty much the same as it's always been. We lose the fight against entropy. Whether it's 5 minutes from now, tomorrow, 5 years from now, 10,000 years from now, death comes for us all. Death comes for individuals, death comes for groups, death comes for civilizations. And regardless of our context, we land squarely in the same realization. If there's any refuge to be taken, it's in this moment. And the future we inherit is cultivated now. The task remains the same. Wisdom, compassion, kindness, skillfulness, responsiveness, and resilience. And the responsibility at an individual level to hold that so that we can trust that at a collective level, we're holding that frequency. And frankly, yes, it's painful. Yes, it releases all this social, energetic, mental, emotional pus. But I think there are some social blisters that have been making it harder and harder to walk for a really long time. And I'm tired of walking with them. And maybe it's painful to pop those blisters, but then it creates the possibility of exploring new reaches that we would not have been able to access had we not taken a moment to address what was happening. Regardless of what happens, okay? Catastrophic collapse, prolonged slow death and decline, or somehow miraculously making it through, cultivating resilience and stability continues to be the most important priority, I think. And the thing with that is that it's kind of boring. It's not very stimulating. It's not Hollywood exciting. It's just the daily act of showing up and making sure that I'm sticking to my meditation practice. It's maybe learning how to grow my own food. It's staying in human connection with the people we care. It means cultivating trust. It means just showing up day in and day out. The true foundations of wellness, especially in this time, and oftentimes it's hardest to do the things that help us most when we need them most, are very straightforward. Rest, exercise, nourish, cleanse. That's from Tom's Open Mandala. Rest, exercise, nourish, cleanse. Sleep, non-negotiable. Anything that interferes with sleep, screens, food, people, habits, behaviors, drugs, cut it out. Get good sleep. Get your cognitive baseline down. Exercise. It doesn't mean go to the gym and work out all the time. It means walk, get outside, be in nature, move your body, run if that's what you're into, do strength training if that's what you're into, do yoga practice if that's what you're into, but keep your body in motion, keep your muscles strong. Individuals after their 30s lose 1% body mass at baseline per year from then on. That means that by the time you're 60, if you haven't done anything about it, you've lost 30% of your muscle mass. Continue to cultivate a strong body. We need it. You need it. That's your vehicle to face the realities that are coming your way, that are coming our way. Nourish, eat good food, eat healthy food. It doesn't mean totally limit yourself and live an ascetic lifestyle. The body gets used to it. After you stop eating processed foods and sugar for like a month, your body's going to start to reject that stuff naturally. Feed yourself good fuel because Lord knows it seems we're in for a long race. And cleanse. Get rid of everything that interferes with the first three. Rest, exercise, nourish, cleanse. Get rid of everything that interferes with the first three. It's one of the things, and I'll make a separate video about this, that's so powerful about a meditation practice is that it slips in through the back door. You say, hey, establish a daily meditation practice where no matter what, at 8 o'clock in the morning, you're sitting down to focus on your breath. And you say, no problem, easy, easy peasy. But the reality is when you start to do it, you start to go, oh my gosh, I can't even wake up in the morning. Why can't I wake up in the morning? Because I'm going to bed too late. Why am I going to bed too late? Because I'm on my screens distracting myself too much. Why am I doing that? Because I'm really stressed because I'm overworking. Why am I doing that? Because I'm carrying all these beliefs about my inherent insufficiency and trying to mask those over with overcompensation. We start to go, oh my God, this food I'm eating makes my stomach upset. All this greasy, disgusting, sugary, processed food is making my mind unclear and hazy. Oh my God, the alcohol I'm drinking is making me foggy-minded. Jumping onto my email first thing in the morning isn't the best way to condition my mind. Okay, so something as simple as the continuity and simplicity of a meditation practice, really focused in on and established on a daily basis, begins to reveal to us all the ways in which we're misaligned with ourselves. Rest, exercise, nourish, and cleanse. These aren't self-help life hacks. These are practices. They give fruit over time, and we return to them even when we don't receive immediate gratification. And what happens as we begin to experientially notice within ourselves is that then we begin to feel connected with ourselves. We start to feel vital. We start to have energy. We start to have clarity of mind. We start to have some sense of internal peace. And what happens is we can bring that into our relationships, and then those relationships bring it right back into us. At a practical level, this is the stuff we need to be cultivating right now. Not more time on TikTok, not more time on Instagram, not inherently opposed to that. And I'm a consumer. I love Substack. I love and hate YouTube, but those have to stay balanced with these other practices. And speaking of practice, your creative practices, whether it's music or drawing or writing or sculpting or poetry, whatever form of creative expression now is so important because it connects you with what's deepest to you, as I talked about in my essay, Art and Authenticity, and it allows you to share with other people. In addition to the development of new language and systems and beliefs and cosmologies and mythology, we're also going to see a return to the collective valuing of group ritual, coming together as a circle, forming, performing, sharing, being, dancing, moving, singing, catharsis, witnessing, and then dissolving again, and again coming together and dissolving and coming together and dissolving. These kinds of rituals are going to come back because they're actually not elective. They are core and foundational to the resilience that makes us human, that has made it so that 300,000 years or 300 million years, we're still here on this world system talking to each other through our little black mirrors. Individuals, groups, and societies that survive collapse scenarios have strong foundations and systems of resilience and redundancy. We are just starting to notice what I think is the beginning of an enormous amount of change. Climate change is going to continue to accelerate. It's too late, okay? We're already in it. Mass extinction that usually took hundreds of thousands of years is now happening over decades. Too late. Mass migration due to climate change going to continue to happen. Huge changes through robotics and AI and energy management throughout the world, economic systems and the digitization of human identity, of human money, of human documentation. All of that is going to continue to happen, along with countless other unforeseen changes that I think are just inevitable. I think now is not the time to try to control the car that's clearly already careening off the highway. Maybe we need to let it crash, because all the effort I expend on trying to move the wheel maybe isn't actually that helpful. The time we spend worrying about the past, the time we spend worrying about the future, unhelpful, because the present really needs our attention right now. I think now is the time to be like seaweed, deeply rooted in the ground and allowing ourselves to move as softly and without resistance as we can through the torrential movements of the cultural waters. And the only way I've come across that we can truly relinquish control in this way is to be deeply grounded in the places we can really trust. If collapse is catastrophic, all we can do is pray we truly have no control. Don't worry about it. If it's not, we're in for a long, slow, painful grind of change that will reshape the world we live in. Those of us who fare well through this are not going to be the ones who have prepared most on an individual level. It's not just the ones who are hoarding food and guns and water when the supply chain inevitably rearranges. It's those of us who have cultivated relationship, community, real community. Those who've cultivated practice, real practice, things that ground us that we can come back to day in and day out, that nobody can take from us. Nobody needs to sell to us. We own them fully. You own your meditation practice. You own your painting practice. You own your walking practice. You own the states of mind. You own the relationships you have. Nobody can take that from you. And I think a lot of what the system is built around is creating in you a false sense of poverty because you don't have enough money, because you could always have more. You don't have enough power because you could always have more. It makes you feel weak and then sells you what it purports to be the remedy. But your strength comes from within. Your strength comes from relationship. Your strength comes from your efforts and everything you build and accrue for yourself, the experiences you've had, the wisdom you carry. Now is a time where our steadiness of mind, our groundedness, health, and strength of body, and the regulation of our nervous system is going to be one of the greatest assets we can bring forward into the changing world. Now is the time to cultivate systems of community cohesiveness and resilience, not when the collapse deepens. It's too late to learn how to swim when you're drowning. It is too late to learn how to swim when you're drowning. The flood is coming. The floods are coming. I don't think it's radical to say that. Build your boats now. Because if it is a mega Hollywood collapse, we're all screwed anyway and it doesn't matter. But I don't think that's what's going to happen. That's not what happened in Rome. That's not what happened in Constantinople. That's not what happened in Mesopotamia. It's not what happened to the Egyptians. It's not what happened to any of the major empires that have existed throughout history. They just changed and became unrecognizable to their former selves. And in these periods of change, just like in times of personal crisis, the end of a relationship, the loss of a child, a new period of sobriety, a huge social humiliation, the loss of work that has given us a sense of identity our whole lives, these are the moments when we're confronted with who and what we really are, and they're full of opportunity. As we experience this slow, gradual, grinding change in the ways we relate to one another, we're going to be confronted to what actually works. What do I actually want to keep bringing with me into the future, individually and culturally? Where do I put my trust? Where do I put my time? Where do I put my energy? That's where your power is. Those of us who make it to the other side are going to be lucky, okay? We're not in control, adaptive, flexible, creative, relational, attentive, connected with themselves and the people around them, aware of their own mind, and rich in community. Many of the historical places we have sought refuge, we have put trust in, we have looked for community, are falling apart. It is up to us to begin to cultivate new pods, new micro communities that can extend out into a mycelial network of macro community. I think the future is multiplicity. The future is harmonizing these different pods rather than one monoculture, because that is the heart of fascism. And it's really easy to do, actually. It involves starting a WhatsApp group with your closest friends so you can keep each other in the loop and share funny articles. It could mean starting a monthly potluck or a walking or meditation group or a book club or a painting group or joining an adult education center or going for a hike with friends. It means being proactive. And I'm talking to men. I'm talking to all of you, but I'm talking to men. Be proactive in reaching out to the people you care for. Show them your pain. Don't just show them your bravado. Don't just show them how great things are going. Don't just say, yeah, things are great. Don't just say, fine. When someone asks you, how are you? Tell them, I feel really scared. I feel really afraid. I feel unsatisfied. I'm anxious about what's going to happen. I'm uncertain about what decision to make, because that's the truth of your experience in the seat of authenticity, which is the seat of vulnerability, which is the seat of intimacy. At this time, we need to be cultivating intimacy with real people in our lives, imperfect as they are. Don't just hope that they'll keep showing up for you. Model it by showing up for them. That's how trust is built, and trust is the glue that holds communities together, and communities are the glue that are going to hold us all together as we continue to move through this grinding, slow, painful transition period. If you go to a church, okay, where people have been going for decades, if you go to any kind of group, bakery that's well known in the neighborhood, what is it that actually brings those people together? Trust. And historically, so much trust has been based on the premise of shared identity. You're a Christian as well, I like you. You are white as well, I like you. You are black as well, I like you. You are gay as well, straight, cis, het, Portuguese, Japanese, I like you. Shared identity is incredibly important. I'm not denigrating it, but I think we're being called to move to a post shared identity sense of cohesiveness and trust, something that's based on values rather than you having a shared view of the world or shared background or experience or skin tone. What are the values you hold? If you are someone who is kind, if you're someone who is compassionate, self-aware, humble, I like you. If you are somebody who does not care about peacefulness, justifies violence in the world, refuses to look at yourself, I don't like you. I still hold intrinsic compassion, and I hope that you develop those qualities because I think they're better for you, and I think they're better for me, and I think they're better for everybody. But I feel that trust needs to start to come from this alignment around values, not shared identity. Or rather, that our sense of shared identity keeps plunging deeper and deeper until we connect on the point of understanding, I'm not a Christian and you're a Muslim. We are both human beings, and maybe even go deeper than that to include our animal siblings and cousins and say, we are all sentient beings. We all carry consciousness within ourselves. That's one of my greatest hopes. So if the shared reference point is not shared identity, what is it? Values, peace, kindness, tolerance, engagement, environmentalism, nonviolence to the extent possible. I don't really care that you look like me, talk like me, feel like me, if you are causing harm to others through your actions and beliefs. Nothing breeds trust like consistency. Consistency for the people in your life, consistency for yourself through your practices, be they spiritual or creative, consistency for your friends, your children, your parents, your uncles, your aunts, your neighbors. What's really interesting and important to remember is that in times of crisis, we tend to become rigid. We tend to tighten up at a neuromuscular level, at a psychological level, when what we need most right now is to become soft, pliable, bouncy, flexible to respond to the things that are going to keep coming our way. And going back to the seaweed analogy, I think the only way to do that is to be deeply rooted in ourselves. So root yourself, help root others, and go into containers and environments and relational contexts that support you in rooting yourself. Professional athletes, musicians, actors, therapists, anyone whose vocation exposes them intrinsically to the raw immediacy of the present moment can attest to one thing. It's better to do it relaxed. You want to get in the zone? Really hard to do that if I'm tense trying to control the outcome. I talked about this in one of my previous essays, shifting away from outcome based decision making to alignment based decision making. One says, this is how I want to leave the party. I want to go home with someone tonight. And the other one says, this is how I want to show up at the party. This is the stance I want to take as I approach a situation rather than this is what I want to get out of the situation. Tightening up just doesn't work. It's a liability. It interferes with our capacity to spontaneously respond to all of the chaos that's going on around us skillfully. What's happening collectively is we're tightening up, and it makes sense. It's a fear response. We're realizing the people at the top don't really know what they're doing any better than we do. And in fact, they have actually been mismanaging the human situation for a long time with our tacit approval and complicity. And right now, the system of the world, interdependent as it is straining to maintain a sense of cohesion. And we're seeing the fissures, the fractures in that strain of trying to maintain cohesion through all of the wars, through all of the tension, the racial tension, the sovereign nation tension that we're witnessing throughout the world. Those are just the release points of a cooking experience that's happening underneath the surface. I think what we're living through is the dawning realization that change not only is necessary, change is already here, and it's going to continue to pull us into it. Finding the middle point between grounding ourselves and taking engaged action and softening and relaxing the result, realizing we really truly don't have as much control as we'd like to have, is going to be really important and very difficult. As we move through this dawning realization, we're getting shaken out of our stupor. Like opioids or sedatives, our culture has been designed to lull us into a state of complacency. We can distract ourselves, we can numb ourselves, we can dissociate ourselves through our pain, through our confusion, through our emotions, through our own thoughts about things. I can let politicians think for me. I don't need to think for myself. That's much more comfortable. It's obvious that the global system we've been cultivating is a giant bubble, and bubbles pop. And those who suffer most are usually not the culprits of creating the bubble in the first place. Now is not the time to panic or decide how big the flood is going to be. Now is the time to start to build arcs. Not one grand ark like Noah or his Mesopotamian predecessor Utnapishtim, many small boats that can support one another. I think that's what we need. I believe our resilience in the face of the ailing monocrop culture of capitalism is a return to regionalism and plurality, and abilities to develop adaptive meaning making. I think we're going to keep seeing the demise of entire groups of people, entire languages, entire species of animals. But one thing I'm not going to miss is the demise of individualism. It just sort of falls apart when true crisis hits. The bravado of rugged individualism really falls apart when you actually really become dependent on other people for your basic needs once more. In times of crisis, in times of survival, you know what becomes really adaptive? Not individualism, empathy, compassion, responsiveness, communication, attunement, generosity. There's a lot of systems that need to collapse. There are a lot of belief systems that need to die. Wildfires clear out the forests for new growth. In these times, we can seek a deeper source of refuge in each other, in the spiritual dimension of our life, in the creative dimensions of our life. And the temporary relief of escapist fantasy begins to reveal itself more and more clearly as useless. The temptation of it, the temptation of numbing, of turning away, of self-soothing, starts to dissolve as we recognize the importance of turning towards each other, of turning towards nature, being held in nature, spending time in nature, protecting nature, turning towards values that are worth cultivating, not just belief systems, values, compassion, clarity, resilience. A very dear friend of mine who's also a therapist once said something very funny to myself and a group of colleagues. Funny/sad. He said that a client of his said this. He said, I want my life to change, but I don't want to change. And that's what I think a lot of us are wanting culturally. We want our culture to change. We want our systems to change. We just don't want to have to change with them. The only way for systems to change, because systems are actually made up of individual components, and that's us, is for us to change. You want to get ready to let go of this global system that's oppressing and bringing violence and harm? Get ready to let go of all of those parts that you carry within yourself. The reality is, this might hurt a bit or a lot before it gets better. Now is a really, really good time, regardless of what happens, to identify what strengthens us, what gives us vitality, clarity, purpose, meaning for the decades to come. To, in Thoreau's word, return to what is most essential in life, and truly consider what we need to abandon in our own lives that keep us complicit in fueling this dying beast in civilization. Sometimes that's easier said than done, but it doesn't make it any less important to say. The resilience of the garden must be cultivated before the flood arrives. Foundations, rest, exercise, nourish, cleanse. Foundations, people, nature, art, spirit, food, movement, sunlight, practice, day in and day out, applying, showing up, even if we don't see immediate results. That's what's going to carry us through. What do you think? What helps you? How do we cultivate resilience? Is that important? What do you find helpful? I really hope we can continue to cultivate online community, but also in-person community. Reach out, say hello, share your thoughts, share your ideas, share your perspective. You are seen, you are valued, you are important, you matter. May all beings enjoy happiness and its causes. May all beings, without exception, be free from suffering and its causes. May this channel self-destruct.